Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we're back on the Franken hauler and we have a little bit of cleaning to do. Alright guys, welcome back. And those of you who were watching last week will have seen that we finally pulled the engine out of the old coaster chassis, did a bit of alignment and sort of formulated a plan on how we were going to move forward on the whole truck build project. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and like always, do the things like and subscribe, and definitely leave a comment. That all helps that mysterious algorithm. So, there were a bunch of suggestions from last week about trying to get off my wheels on the back. If you were watching, you will have seen that I was basically, I can't currently roll this truck, even though it has no handbrake even in it anymore because it was part of the gearbox, on the back of the gearbox. There's no engine, there's no anything in it. It should be relatively easy to roll backwards and forwards, and the back axles, it feels like the brakes are locked on both sides. I tried to crack the wheel nuts off, and I was having a real bear of a time. And a lot of you actually let me know that on the left-hand side of the Toyota coasters, they have left-hand threads, so no wonder I couldn't get them off, even with a six-foot breaker bar. So first thing I'm going to do today is I think I'm going to move the truck forward on some dollies, lift it up in the air and just and roll it forward so I get a little bit more room. And then we're going to try again at getting those wheels off and see if we can unlock those brakes. So then I can move it around much easier, and it'll make my life a lot easier just using the shed. So people did tell me that there is an L on the wheel nuts. The other side does not have that, telling you it's left hand. Now, I mean, that just looks like a line. It doesn't look like an obvious L, but on the rear wheels, it's a little bit more obvious. Hopefully that camera is picking that up. We have left-hand threads. So this time with a 6-foot breaker bar, the wheel nuts broke loose very easily. It really helps if you are turning it in the right direction. But now the wheel nuts are off, for the life of me I could not get the inner wheel off. And I don't have a tool to undo the studs, as they're a square drive and it's a very large square drive. So if it does require the studs removed, I'm going to have to get the right tool. But I soon discovered I can get to the drum brake adjusters from the back of the hub anyway, so that is where I tackled next. Alright, so I managed to remove the outer wheel without too much trouble, but this inner wheel does not want to come off. I'm not sure, I don't believe I need to take the studs out. I'm pretty sure this should come off, but I've tried smacking it on the front, smacking it on the back. I've used some penetrating oil, all sorts of stuff, but this wheel is very well stuck on. But I did have another win. On the back was a couple of these little rubber covers, and inside it gave me access to the adjusting wheel of the drum brakes. You can see that little cog inside the drum brake, and that is the adjusting cog. And down the bottom, there's that little curve of metal you can see through there, and I need to sort of hook underneath that and lift it up, and that releases the wheel so that you can undo it, because you can only turn them in one direction. It has a stopper on it, and I did that for both sides. There seems to be two separate drums on either side, and now I can move a wheel. So I'm just going to do the same on the other side without taking the wheel off, yeah, I can deal with taking wheels off at a later date, as long as I can move the thing around. All right, the drums are probably too loose at the moment. They do need to be adjusted tighter for when I get back on the road. So hopefully I remember to do that, but I can move the truck. That's what I should have been able to do from the start. So at least they're looser now, and I can deal with the sticking inner wheel at a later date. So I soon realised I couldn't push the truck up the hill, so I brought out the tow vehicle that I had at hand to help with the job. It's very handy that the cab is so light that I can lift it and roll it around by itself. And it's also handy that I'm not too precious about the paint job. I know it's slightly unorthodox towing a truck with a race car, but when needs must, and the Rockster did a good job. So we now have the chassis outside. I want to bag up all the wiring and get that sort of bundled out of the way, because I keep sort of chucking it around the place, and I really don't want to get it damaged. I need to look after that and cover up some things so we can give this chassis a good pressure wash. So first things first, I moved the last little piece of frame that I was using as a nice solid base for the cab, and then started gathering up all of the wiring harness and completely disconnecting it so I can remove it completely from the chassis. And then it was a long, wet, cold task of pressure washing the entire chassis. It felt like this had lived its whole life off-road with the amount of dirt and mud throughout the whole thing. Then I had to go over the entire chassis, every single piece, with some Scotch-Brite. And while I was at it, remove the exhaust and any of the other hoses, etc., that were still sort of in the way. Also required a lot of degreaser on some of the bits like the diff and the tail shaft. There was lots of caked on years and years of grease that I needed to remove. With it all cleaned up, we can go back in the shed. All right, the chassis is looking so much better now. I spent a couple of hours then going over and cleaning, and then I got the Scotch-Brite out and Scotch-Brite and degreaser over everything, and it's a lot of ground to cover, lots of little nooks and crannies to get into, but I wanted to get it all stripped back so that I can start building it back up again and get it ready for paint, because I want to just give this chassis a very loose coat of enamel black, just because it will just look so much nicer. And I'm not going to town, not stripping everything off. I'm just going to give it a quick and lovely refresh, just to make it look a little bit nicer and just make things a lot neater to work on. Yes, I'm going to be sanding bits back and grinding bits back, but I can easily touch it up again later. So let's continue now going through. I need to go through with the wax and grease remover over the entire chassis, which is a lot of work. So let's keep going with what I was doing.
So before I prep salt, I'm going over and blowing off the entire chassis because the water likes to sit under any bolts, any little crack or crevice, there'll be water sitting there. So it's always a good idea before you spray to blow everything out first, because as soon as you hit it with the spray gun, the water's going to come out, but then it's going to be in your paint. And then a clean up with wax and grease remover.
All right, it's well used, but this is what I'm using. So this is the Concept Paints 402 Gloss Black, which is it's a single pack epoxy coating, and it comes out glossy and super hard wearing. I've used it on a bunch of suspension components on the Alpha and a bunch of things. I'm really happy with the how nice the finish is on this stuff, and I keep it in a gun all the time, ready to go. This is just my black gun. It's an old gun that I've got with the black paint in it, ready to roll. So because it's just a single K thing, just you shouldn't leave painting in a gun like this, but it's, you know, it's I clean out the tip enough so that it doesn't clog up in the tip, and just go with it, and it's ready to roll. So let's start getting some black on that chassis and make it look a little bit nicer than it does right now. Ah, how good does that look? It just looks so much nicer straight away. Just giving it a good coat of paint, and it's not perfect. There are little spots that I've missed and whatever, but it just makes the whole thing a much nicer place to work. And I'm not going to be filthy every time I work. I don't want to be working in mud and muck, and yeah, now I can see what I'm doing, and everything is going to be nice moving forward. And like I mentioned, I can easily touch it all up. So wherever I have to move engine mounts, I can easily just move the engine mounts and then touch up the old spots, and it'll all sort of match in and just looks nice and neat and tidy moving forward. So next thing, I think we need to move on to the engine. All right, I've got the engine up on some stands now so I can get around it, and I think it's time to give it the same treatment I gave the chassis, and give it a bit of a tidy up and maybe a quick lick of paint just to make it look a little bit fresher. Again, I'm not going to town. I'm not making the Alfa. I'm just doing a work truck, and let's make it look a bit better than it does.
So I start by stripping off the major components of the engine. Now this is a great tip I got off of Sarah in Tuned for trimming around these sort of edges. If you use a light hammer taps all the way around the edge of the masking tape, it cuts it very neatly and makes your masking job very easy. Now I'm not stripping everything off the engine, I'm not going that far, just the major components, and I don't want paint inside my alternator, so that's got to come off. Now a bit of degreaser and wire brush around everywhere, getting rid of the years of grease and grime and grot off of this engine. And then Scotch Brighting everything, making sure I've got a nice keyed surface for the paint to stick.
All right, now I've got the engine cleaned up. I'm going to go over with some Prepsol, and then I'll start painting bits and pieces up. I'm not too concerned about doing everything to the nth degree. As I said, this is just an old truck. I just want it to look a bit nicer than it already does. So let's start cleaning and painting.
So the heat shield, I gave a quick coat of high heat enamel. That's the only part of an engine that really gets hot enough that you need to worry about using high heat paint on that, and obviously the headers themselves. I've painted dozens and dozens of engines over the years, and I use regular automotive paint on the external engine and never had a problem with discolouring due to heat. You can see here I'm using just a bit of etch primer just to help a little bit of the adhesion for the colour to come later. And I'm only spraying light coats on this. I don't want a really thick caked on paint layer on this engine. And this is the colour I chose. It's a nice bronze colour. I wanted a nice bronze colour as the highlight colour for this truck, and you'll see this carry over on other parts as the build progresses. Making sure to get every little nook and cranny.
All right, we've got the colour on. That's a base coat, and I'm going to use some of the Concept Matte Clear. So it's a 2-pack product, so I'm going to mix it up 2 to 1, and we'll get a clear coat on this engine and see how it looks.
So you can see here I've got 2 parts of the clear and then 1 part of the hardener. Give it a little bit of stir, and then I add about 10% thinners on top of that. And you can see here that I'm only adding 1 relatively light coat over the entire engine. I don't want that paint build up. This is just enough to seal in the base coat.
Another week where it doesn't feel like I got much done. I didn't have as much time this week working on other stuff in the background, our Ferrari, etc. But the engine is painted. The chassis is painted. This should dry up a nice matte, and that'll be sort of what I'm looking for on this old truck, is I don't want it too spiffy and shiny. So that'll be good. I know this is a ghetto paint job, and it's, you know, I'm just painting over everything. I'm not stripping it down to a bare block and all the rest of it, because it's just not worth it. It's not the engine to do that. If I ever completely rebuild it, then maybe I'll do that then. As you can see, the sump has not been painted because I have the new sump now and a bunch of bits and pieces. So now that everything's clean, it's so much easier to work with. And I will, next episode on this, I'll be replacing that sump, and then I can get the right location into the chassis and all the rest of it. I have a bit of a plan with the chassis, so we'll look at that next time as well. But that is definitely all the time I have this week, so I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hi guys. By the second half of 1908, Henry Ford had regained the controlling ownership of the Ford Motor Company, and he set about scrapping the existing lineup of cars to produce one new vehicle, the Model T. The Model T was Henry Ford's vision of creating an affordable, easily maintainable, reliable vehicle for the masses. And within a few days of its release, on the 27th of September 1908, there were 15,000 orders. Now, it was initially priced at $780, but by the end of its almost 20-year run, the price had dropped to $290. Costs were kept low due to the first use of a moving production line for a mass market vehicle, although credit for the production line really belongs to Ransom E. Olds, although his was static. The Model T was powered by a 2.9 litre 4-cylinder with a 2-speed gearbox. And Henry Ford said you could have it, famously, in any colour you like as long as it's black. On May 26, 1927, Henry Ford watched the 15 millionth Model T roll off the production line before production ceased completely in September of the same year. It held the record for the most sold car in history until that record was surpassed in 1972 by the Beetle. Oh, I've just noticed.
Yeah.
It's
She's
good.
Not.
That's really good. Actually, the orange kind of suits the gold. I'd say I'm colour coordinated. Looking nice.
It is looking nice. I'm very happy with the results. It's going to be so much nicer working with sort of clean stuff rather than the filthy mess that it was.
Yeah.
It just makes everything easier. So that is good, and we'll get back onto more of that on the next episode when I start pulling into the engine a bit more and getting some things done there. So hopefully you'll join us on that. But next week I actually have. Hopefully it goes through this time, the final engineering for the Ferrari. And so I've got a bit of stuff to do on that. So hopefully that will be the episode for next week. And fingers crossed everything goes well. And we have the Ferrari almost ready to be registered and legally used on the road.
Fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed. Because anyway, please like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think of the videos. Loves reading your comments. And if you want to help him out, and support this madness,
Yes.
Patreon. See the videos a day early with no ads as well.
Perfect. All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
By the end of its 20-year run, it had
Almost
dropped...
20 years.
Apologies, my lord. The price had dropped to $280. 90.
Which helped keep the cost
Shush.
low or something.
No, just stop. Actually put in place by Robert E. Olds, although his was static.
Is it Robert?
Ransom. Costs were kept low due to the use of the mare.
The first use.
Shut up. Stop it. Let me do it.
Yes. Finally.
You don't help. Stop commenting.
I said yes.
Shush. No, don't. Just don't speak. Don't even
I
don't
agreed.
look at me. No,
I agreed with
shush.
you.
It's irritating.
You are irritating.
Henry Ford watched the 15th millionth Model T roll off the production line. What did I say? This is so weird.
15th millionth or something weird.
15th millionth. 15 millionth. What is it? 15 millionth.
Yes.
I can't, it's just like this. On May 26, 1927, Henry Ford watched the 15 millionth. It's a bit hard to say. On May 26, 1927.